It's easy to approach a child, even at first. They may treat you with some disdain, but soon you will break down the barrier with them, and you become a person. Clothes. They gain trust in you. The child has a system that revolves around a few needs. We don't. Our world is very complex. And Jesus says that if we want to enter the heart of things, the heart of the world, we need to achieve the simplicity. God rejoices deeply every time we make a move of healing, of restoration, and change of habits. God rejoices deeply every time we live. The consequences of conversion? Because these consequences act directly on our character. How do we become different as God? We build ourselves this way. The more I allow this project of simplicity to take over my heart, the greater the possibility I have of being a favorable response to the world, a response that helps to edify. Since there are so many people today not willing to build absolutely anything, I, a priest Fabio, if I become an unbearable person to others, I do need to reconsider how much of God has already happened in me. And it's not just the toxins that addict us. Hatred addicts us. Does prejudice addict us? Sometimes we don't have the courage to pick up a gun and kill another, like those people did in Paris. But we kill others in another way. We kill with our contempt, with our arrogance, We point at others cruelly and still feel like Christians because of it. When we don't give others the opportunity to be who they are, when we limit ourselves to being that character we imagine, I don't like that person because they are like this. Who said? You imagine it that way? And Jesus teaches us. We who are little Christians understand eternity as a beautiful and happy opportunity to be in God and with the people we love, wanting and seeking this kingdom of God already gives us the opportunity to begin building this kingdom here today. Because it is natural that I want to live this eternity. If I seek to deserve this eternity through my actions, right? I would naturally be a better person. My goal is the kingdom of heaven. I experience this feat of making the human kingdom also very pleasant. It is when we choose to reduce the differences between us, when we are willing to be a little more loving, to respond less with hate. So the love of people, it is the main engine for our transformation. So if we have a home where people love each other, where love, the bond, is cultivated, we will certainly have a very favorable environment for happiness and personal fulfillment. This is interesting because when I am truly loved by someone, I end up accepting the word of the one who loves me. I accept correction better when it is done with love because I feel that they are very committed to my well-being. I want it. I want to change what is unbearable in me, for me and for others. First, I deserve this transformation. Second, because others deserve it. And if I am there, in the dynamic of this deserving, others are too. God is there, because God is very happy. When a child recognizes what is still in him is an obstacle to fulfillment, Jesus says that for us to reach this kingdom, for us to enter the kingdom that is eternal, and this kingdom that is already anticipated here, we need to strip ourselves to have a simple heart. That's when I'm willing, not to cling to what is excess. Can you observe a child? First, the understanding he has of the world. It is his most urgent need. He can't see beyond that. The context of a child is very simple. It is a very simple context. It is very direct. There is not much complication. As we become adults, we become more complex, becoming the structure of our lives. We have many needs, right? We build so many structures for us to be happy. Not a child. Let a child loose in a field with his father, his mother, an 11-ball, a bicycle, and the world is perfect. But as we grow, we create needs and we move further and further away from happiness because we impose so many conditions for ourselves to be happy that it becomes difficult to achieve that happiness. We cannot lose. We do not have. We do not have the right to do this to ourselves. Would losing the opportunity to make our sufferings worth it? I say again, if we do not make this movement of simplification, of simplicity, of simplifying our processes, we will not be friends with anyone because we will always remain in the waiting room of prejudice or in the waiting room of resentment, hurt, and hatred. How many times do I find myself living by the rules of my defects Because when I start to live by the rules of my qualities, I become lighter for others. I become happier. Jesus says that for us to reach this kingdom, for us to enter the kingdom that is eternal and this kingdom that is already anticipated here, we need to strip ourselves. We will have a simple heart. That's when I am willing, not to cling to what is excess. Can you observe a child? The understanding they have of the world. It is their most urgent need. They cannot see beyond that. The context of a child is very simple. It is a very simple context. It is very direct. There is not much complication. As we become adults, we become more complex, developing the structure of our lives. We have many needs, right? We build so many structures to be happy. Not a child. Set a child loose in a field or with his father, with his mother, a ball or a bicycle, and the world is perfect. But as we grow, we create needs and we move further and further away from happiness because we impose so many conditions on ourselves to be happy that it becomes difficult to achieve that happiness. We can't lose. We don't have it. We don't have the right to do this to ourselves. Would losing the opportunity to make our sufferings worth it? I say again, if we don't make this movement of simplification, of simplicity, of simplifying our processes, we won't be friends with anyone because we will always remain in the waiting room of prejudice or in the waiting room of resentment, hurt, and hate. How often do I find myself living by the rules of my defects? Because when I start living by the rules of my qualities, I become lighter for others. I become happier. I become naturally more interesting. Even for me, not for others, no. The first movement we experience from conversion is the satisfaction of being who we are. Because sometimes we think that our conversion is to please God, God is happy to the extent that we are. Today we had in Paris a manifestation of hatred, of intolerance. When our heart is visited by this kingdom of heaven, this desire to deserve the kingdom, we anticipate it with our attitudes. That is why the Christian proposal is profoundly existential. It's the boat, our life. It's not a theory that just puts us kneeling before a sacred altar. Christianity is, above all, a proposal to have inside our heads, in our mental system, a way of being and living. None particularly. I usually say that we, Christians, are largely responsible for atheism in the world, for our lack of witness. Sometimes we have years and years and years of religious belonging, 20 years as a priest, 30 years as an encore. That we are unbearable, we are inelegant, we are rude. I don't know where God is in this story. If God's process in our lives is precisely to tame our hearts, is it to make us break the rules of defects? It is to stop us from being adapted to evil. If you have this, if you give yourself the right to have this, to simplify, to live this detachment that makes you happy, then you're on the right path. I think this is a mystique we all need to live daily. This newness that the year can represent. This opportunity we have to believe that something can be different. It can be a wonderful year. It will be wonderful, not because of the material set we will have, the material we will achieve. We may take steps back. We may earn less. We may choose to have less. But if we make an emotional, spiritual investment, this year I want to be a year where I will love a lot. I want to be present in the lives of the people I love. I want to be present in the lives of my children, my friends, my father, my mother. I want to be present in the lives of my brothers. I want to be present in the lives of those who work with me. I want to choose a year that makes me more of a child, more of a person, with fewer complications. As for saying sometimes, within our religious experience, this hypocrisy, it compromises the whole result. God sometimes misses the opportunity to access our hearts because of our resistance or because of the cultivation of our vices. St. Augustine said that even for us to feel repentant for the mistake we made, we already need to be under the influence of grace. So let's ask for this. May God's grace happen today in our hearts, opening our eyes, for our conscience, so that we are able to perceive. Everything in us today needs to be touched by the merciful love of Jesus, and that from this love, this mercy, we can return to our place. Take our place, go back to seeking what is essential for us to be. What does God want us to be? Or rather, for Him to be what God knows we can be. and we have many days ahead of us. Forward, to do this cleaning of Alba. Get rid of everything that stops us to live the life we can truly live. The most interesting thing is for us to achieve balance. We should never stay at extremes. With all due respect, they can represent that. Extremes can represent limits of intelligence, of reflection. But when we mix the supernatural of life with that which is absolutely natural, then we begin to touch a human reality that you know very well. You experience this reality all the time, and you know that no, not everything can be explained from it. So we are in the balance between the supernatural and the natural. What is it precisely that makes us interesting people? I am increasingly convinced that the most interesting people in life are those who have managed to balance the supernatural with the natural. They have discovered the beauty of being human. And by knowing themselves, humans can articulate the divine dimension of life. And they begin to eternalize life. And they begin to eternalize their days, by living well. Because every time we know ourselves, discover that we are cared for by someone, in some way, the care that the other has for us awakens a different way of living, For example, when I remember that my mother loves me, that I am important to her, and that I would be greatly missed in my mother's life, I slow down. I take my foot off the accelerator. I start to value my life a little more. I start to choose my foods a little better. I start to choose my health a little better. Because every time we know that we are important in someone's life, we take care of ourselves because of that someone we know is important. Maybe it's even an interesting way for you to qualify the love you have for your children. If you know that your life is important to your children, if you know that it is interesting for your children to have a father for longer, a mother for longer, so do you feel obligated to take care of your health? Because of the love you have for them. Then you change your habits. You change your way of living. You stop exposing yourself to the dangers of addiction. You stop exposing yourself to the dangers of life. You'll start living a little more carefully. You'll look a little more carefully before crossing the street. You'll drive a little slower on the roads. You'll make fewer dangerous overtaking maneuvers because you know you have children waiting for you. And you know it's important for your children to see you arrive home. This is how love changes our lives. It's not any other way. It's not by reading a book that we learn to be a father. It's not by reading a book that we learn to be a mother, to be a brother. It's not by reading a book that we learn to love. No, but it's by discovering within our experience through care. Does anyone care for us? Does anyone care, even if it's just thinking about us, even if it's just remembering us? Is anyone nurturing who we are in our hearts, deep down? And because of this, I feel motivated to live differently. I feel motivated to live. Finally, equality. If there's a sin in the world today, it's the lack of quality of life. We live very poorly. We take very little care of ourselves. We expose ourselves to the risks of this life precisely because we forget that we are precious to many people. When we see before our eyes the value we have for others, we take care of ourselves a little more. The Joe without beautiful experience that this song doesn't suggest. God takes care of me. God takes care of you, but you need to respond the same way I do. Then, if God takes care of us, we respond with the care we will have with our lives. Start asking yourself, what is the quality of your life? How have you taken care of yourself? How have you lived? What have you chosen for your life? How have you crossed the streets of this life? How have you traveled? How have you walked? How have you worked? How have you eaten? All of this, God. In all these questions, God lives. Why not? Naturally, we discover the power of the supernatural. In the small things, in these details of our daily lives, we discover God's challenges. Do you see how the room doesn't need to light up and an angel come in and talk to you for you to feel touched by God? God touches us through very simple questions because God is very simple. God is everyday. God is concrete. God smells like a mother. God smells like a father. God smells like a brother, a friend. God is alive, and he constantly appears in our lives through people we love. When we feel this, we will feel motivated to change the way we speak, the way we smile, the way we talk, the way we love, the way we act, because we know that there are people who deserve the best of us. It may be that until today, you have lived giving just a little of who you are. Don't save, because in this economy you lose, you save, but whoever is here, you lose. Change our way of speaking, our way of smiling, our way of talking, loving, acting, because we know that there are people who deserve the best of us. It may be that until today you have lived giving only a little of who you are. I did not save ourselves, because in this economy you lose. Save a little, and you lose much more than you gain. Now, when we improve our way of being and offer to others a higher quality, more qualified being, you can be sure that the first to benefit from all this is yourself. Care is one of the most human realities we can experience, even because we are born with the experience of care. We are born and constantly defend the care of those who love us. Being cared for is also a way of growing, because only because of care do we overcome life's problems, adversities, and we break through as people. So, in the experience of care, maturity is being cemented. It is beautiful we think about this. In the experience of God's care, we are not infantilized because He cares, but on the contrary, because He cares for us, we are stimulated to grow. Childhood is a time that needs to pass through childhood. It is a time that needs to pass through our lives. And do you know? You know that God cares for you. But you look both ways when you cross the street. It means there is a responsibility in those who know how to take care of themselves, in those who know that there's a providence taking care, but that there's also a human reality that needs to be observed. Therein lies the beauty of religion, my people, in knowing that there is a supernatural gift, but that there is also a natural gift, and that true religion is that which manages to establish the bonds of the supernatural with what is natural in life. Do religions that survive only on the supernatural run the risk of being inhumane? And perhaps you have already seen many models of religion. World, but you look both ways when you cross the street. It means there's a responsibility in those who know how to take care of themselves, in those who know that there's a providence taking care, but that there's also a human reality that needs to be observed. Therein lies the beauty of religion, my people, not knowing that there is a supernatural gift, but that there is also a natural gift, and that true religion is the one that manages to establish the bonds of the supernatural with what is natural in life. Religions that survive only on the supernatural run the risk of being inhumane. And perhaps you have already seen many models of religion in the world that will become causes of wars. In fact, holy wars are born from an excess of supernaturalism when we forget human reality. On the other hand, if we live only in natural religion, we become disconnected from the sacred, and we become people who constantly articulate decisions, and who can hardly contemplate anything supernatural, because they have become too attached to what merely is. Every time life gives us the opportunity to reconcile with the past, we cannot miss it, that we will not always have the opportunity to reconcile with our mistakes or with yours, right? But what happiness? I like the word fulfillment. A person, to be fulfilled, needs to accommodate within their heart everything that was part of their history. Everything, 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 everything. Resentments, hurts, abandonments, betrayals, infidelity, joys, successes, good memories. That's why I insist on the need for us to live this process of purification every day. Because when we let everything accumulate, it's a lot of work. It's like going a week without food and then eating it all at once. The body can't handle it. It needs it. The body has to direct, to move the food. We also have to stop managing our emotions, our spirituality, our love life. I say it again. Our reconciliation with life needs to be constant. When I don't accommodate a person within my heart, when I don't put in the right place that person who meant suffering in my life, sooner or later, the memory of that person will take away my peace. Even more so when we deal with Father who comes with an unhappy and regrettable conscience. When you encounter someone in life who has come to the conclusion that they didn't love, that they could have loved, that they didn't forgive, that they could have forgiven. And that's why this recycling, right? I always like to use the language of recycling because there is a lot of wisdom in recycling. I take a damaged piece and transform it into a new object. The essence remains. It is old. Now, what do I do with that which is old? The new look that I give to that which is old. That's what beauty, art, is all about. We need to do the same in our lives. We also have our mismatches. Life constantly offers me pieces that fit, but it also offers me pieces that don't. Heart everything that was part of their history. Everything, 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 everything. Resentments, hurts, abandonments, betrayals, infidelity, joys, successes, good memories. That's why I insist on the need for us to live this process of purification every day. Because when we let everything accumulate, it's a lot of work. It's like going a week without food and then eating it all at once. The body can't handle it. It needs it. The body has to direct to move the food. We also have to stop managing our emotions, our spirituality, our love life. I say it again. Our reconciliation with life needs to be constant. When I don't accommodate a person within my heart, when I don't put in the right place that person who meant suffering in my life, sooner or later, the memory of that person will take away my peace. Even more so when we deal with Father who comes with an unhappy and regrettable conscience. When you encounter someone in life who has come to the conclusion that they didn't love, that they could have loved, that they didn't forgive, that they could have forgiven. And that's why this recycling, right? I always like to use the language of recycling because there's a lot of wisdom in recycling. I take a damaged piece and transform it into a new object. The essence remains. It is old. Now, what do I do with that which is old? The new look that I give to that which is old. That's what beauty, art is all about. We need to do the same in our lives. We also have our mismatches. Life constantly offers me pieces that fit, but it also offers me pieces that don't. And then sometimes we take precious time out of our lives looking at those pieces, reflecting on them, so we can discover, how can I keep this inside now? Because if not, if we don't do this exercise every day, soon we will transform ourselves in a confused state, in an environment of so much trash, so much disorder, and we don't find ourselves. It's regrettable when we come to the conclusion that we are not finding ourselves in our own story. What was missing was this care, this commitment. No, it's an everyday commitment. Today I need to come to terms with what happened to me. There are good things, there are bad things, and now, what do I do with all of this? My people, holding grudges, holding resentments, is the same thing as judging a dirty thing by its clean house. It becomes unbearable. Every time you walk past a clean room with that stain of what you threw away dirty, you'll feel uncomfortable. Affections? Your emotional life is the same thing. If you don't put it in the right place, if you don't recycle it, it will become a nuisance. Esther, it's the same here. There's a lady here saying to me, Father, I discovered that my husband cheated on me. What do I do? Forgive? Is there a possibility of having a child from this new one, from this betrayal? What am I going to do with this story now? Is it here? This lady's challenges? Life didn't turn out the way she wanted. Life didn't turn out the way he promised, which would be fidelity, love. But would it? What will she do? Will she kill herself? No. She now faces a situation, a difficult piece to fit together. Look, when you look at the story, the people around you, you'll see that this isn't privilege of yours. It's not just you who has difficulties. It's not just you who has problems. Patricia's story is the story of many people watching me now. I'm absolutely certain that at some point in your life, you also needed to forgive someone who was very important to you. At some point in your love life, you also experienced this imbalance, this disarray, right? This disharmony. So, what do you do with all those people who hurt you, with all those people who offended you, with all those people who caused terrible colors within your heart, who left dreadful marks within you? You didn't arrive at the right place. Forgive. That's why forgiveness is important. Forgiveness is therapeutic. Because of this, when I forgive, I am freeing my heart from the weight that person brought me. I don't want to hold a grudge. I don't want to keep that mark in the same way that you will now have to look into your husband's eyes. Of finding him a traitor today, of knowing that today the betrayal is concrete in your life, but you contracted your whole life, that there are good things in this man, and that, who knows, now is the time for you to affirm, right, your love for him, because we only forgive those we love. Marriage, reconciliation is possible, yes, as long as there is love to start over. If there is love, my people, we will be able to start over any story, no matter how terrible the fact was when we love. When then love is connecting us, and love is being the reason we start over like this. Cheated? I know it's hard to live behind, but there are many people who rebuild a relationship still from the fragility. Everything will depend on how people face this moment. Everything will depend on how people will look at this new fact. Everything will depend on how we respond to this knock that life gave on the door. Do you have your struggles? I have mine. Today you must also have a lot of things that don't fit inside your heart. Is it that bad news you received? Is it that word that reached your ear that left you apprehensive? There are many things that enter our heads every day. So inside our hearts that unstructure us are encounters we have. Sometimes we meet. We encounter people in life who do us terrible harm. Watch experiences that last years and years, and only after they're over will you see the damage they cause within you. It could be news of a death, news of an illness of a loved one, or perhaps even news of your own illness. Today, you have pieces in a box. I do, everyone does. It's not my privilege. It's not your privilege. Now, everything will depend on the final result. It will depend on how we accommodate this disharmony within ourselves. I always think about this. When I give a testimony of what God has done in my life, I offer a path for others to also walk and have a similar experience. It is never the same. The experience is never the same because God happens in me. What God does in me, He will do from who I am. When God happens in you, it will happen from who you are. So our experiences will be different. Cheated? I know it's hard to live behind, but there are many people who rebuild a relationship still from the fragility. Everything will depend on how people face this moment. Everything will depend on how people will look at this new fact. Everything will depend on how we respond to this knock that life gave on the door. Do you have your struggles? I have mine. Today you must also have a lot of things that don't fit inside your heart. Is it that bad news you received? Is it that word that reached your ear that left you apprehensive? There are many things that enter our heads every day. So inside our hearts that unstructure us are encounters we have. Sometimes we meet. We encounter people in life who do us terrible harm. Watch experiences that last years and years, and only after they're over will you see the damage they cause within you. It could be news of a death, news of an illness of a loved one, or perhaps even news of your own illness. Today, you have pieces in a box. I do. Everyone does. It's not my privilege. It's not your privilege. Now, everything will depend on the final result. It will depend on how we accommodate this disharmony within ourselves. I always think about this. When I give a testimony of what God has done in my life, I offer a path for others to also walk and have a similar experience. It is never the same. The experience is never the same because God happens in me. What God does in me, He will do from who I am. When God happens in you, it will happen from who you are. So our experiences will be different because we are different. Although God is the same, it is just that I have different needs, and God will act according to my needs. Is it so significant that the deaf return to hearing deafness? Is it for the one who has it? In fact, the other day I was talking about 111 people saying that deafness is even worse than the next. Why? Blindness separates me from the world. Deafness separates me from people. When I am blind, I stop seeing the world. When I am deaf, I stop being with people. It must cause a great deal of loneliness, right? So, being cured of deafness to be returned to people, but we could think, but I don't have this physical deafness. I don't need to be cured. This deafness? Physical. Okay, but I have that. That deafness that my folder people because I lost the ability to. The listening, right? Rubem Alves said this, that he saw so many advertisements for public speaking courses to teach people how to speak. Courses to teach how to speak in public, to have good rhetoric, to know how to argue. But he didn't know about a listening course. It was precisely to teach us how to listen. When we lose the ability to listen to others, when we lose the willingness to listen to others, we greatly compromise our relationships. Much of the conflict we face at home is because we have forgotten how to listen. And when I say listen, my people, it is creating the ambience for what needs to be said about the matter, which sometimes we even say, but in the wrong way. We shout what should be attacked. patience with calm, serenity, and that is why we do not resolve the issues in Rio de Janeiro. And it is interesting, because when I do not know how to listen, I naturally provoke in the other an unwillingness to listen to me too. Your daughter, when she has desire, I am when Jesus gives man back this ability to listen. What the hell am I going to marry? So he is returning it to people. Because you got the girl pregnant, my son, identify what the Avaya part, which made it difficult to be with others, to have qualified relationships. When I say qualified relationships, they are relationships that do us good, that make us grow. And does salvation come through the ear? Bia says, through the word that transforms us. And God saves us through the words of well-intentioned people who love us. But if we don't listen to these people, how am I going to enjoy the saving benefit that comes to me through the word of another? It's interesting because we are in a time and time. This I naturally provoke in others an unwillingness to listen to me as well. When does Jesus restore this ability to listen to man? He is returning it to him, to people. This is very interesting to identify. What the Avaya part, what made it difficult to be with others, to have qualified relationships. When I say qualified relationships, I mean relationships that do us good, that make us grow. Because salvation does not come by listening, through the word that transforms us. And God saves us through the words of well-intentioned people who love us. But if we do not listen to these people, how will I enjoy the saving benefit that comes to me through the word of another? It is interesting because we are in a time and time. We are willing to listen. We want to talk. Do we talk a lot? Sometimes we listen little. And why do we listen little? We miss the opportunity to find solutions, or even to mend some rough edges between us. Parents and children, it is not you who are the father, you who are mother. You know exactly. And how is it necessary to create the excuse, the discipline of listening? Children need to be listened to. Parents need to be listened to. If the relationship is not based on the discipline of dispute, the family is not possible. And sometimes there are people who have been trying to tell us for a long time, trying to talk to us, and we do not create the inner disposition, or even external people, because depending on the face we make, everyone, he knows exactly that he cannot say anything to us, and then we become deaf, even though we have the ability to hear. Even though we have the ability to hear, do we continue to be deaf? Or is it that deafness that the other tells us the truth? The other says everything we need to hear to improve, to change our lives. And we interpret that as an affront, as an insult. Don't you know? God comes to us through the word of the one who loves us. God comes to us through that advice that invites us. And how do you know it's someone's word? Say when you realize that there's coherence in what the other is saying. What sometimes irritates us is not that the other told us the truth. It's that we don't want to assume that the other values us. So we listen. We get irritated by what the other says to us. Not because he was wrong. No, because he was completely right. We know that, but we don't want to admit it. And he was right about them. So our deafness also manifested itself. I heard perfectly. The other was able to tell me what he needed to say, and I didn't consider the truth of what he said. I didn't realize that those words could help me overcome what I said, overcome what was said with unwillingness, listen with laziness. There was a thought that the other person was saying something just to annoy me, just to disturb me. Deafness. Am I deaf? I'm not able to perceive the voice that guides me. I'm not able to decode the voice of God that speaks through the human voice. We who have lived in community for a long time, right? I personally spent my entire life in the seminary. The people here at Cansau Nova who live in community also have superiors. How many times do the people responsible for our education try to tell us, try to warn us about what is dangerous for us? And we have a filter here. Look, that doesn't allow the word to fall into our body. Do you already dislike that person? Have you developed an antipathy for everything they say, so you don't listen to what they say? This happens in our home too. Sometimes our children develop an antipathy for what their father is saying, for what their mother is saying, for what their brother says. So we become deaf to the other person's word, no matter how honest, no matter how assertive. in sky, as if it were unnecessary. This is a really big loss, people, because we are transformed, and through words we lose the ability to hear. And even when I read, I'm listening. Why am I listening? This word, it has an inner voice. When I skim the text, there's a voice telling me internally. When I'm deaf because of my lifestyle, not even what I read touches me. I'm so agitated. My life is so busy that I don't have something happy, an opportunity to be touched by words. Yes, that's what Jesus cured in this man. He cured his deafness first. Then he awakened his tongue so that he could speak again. Is this also significant? By being cured of my deafness, I regained the ability to speak. In fact, it needs to be, and there's a very interesting consonance. Wisdom comes from our ability to listen and also from our ability. What is it about? I have great respect for what I say. I have great respect for the word I proclaim, especially here in this space, because I know that people are listening. Father, do you know when you feel that you haven't made the best choices because you've always allowed others to do things for you and that you need to, and you need to start a new time? You know, when you've already discovered the reasons for these choices and everything you needed to know to avoid falling into their trap again, or even that you have concrete reasons for being different without strength, but that you've always managed to hold on to a detail that made you rise from the ashes, and now you don't seem to see it. Well, dear Father, in tears and with shame I tell you, I'm like this. I'm not sick. No one died. I'm healthy. I have a job, a family. But I'm in a phase of inaction, and it's killing me inside. I never had the emotional foundation of family. I had all the necessary material. I always believed that I would form this foundation in a family that hasn't arrived yet, and I don't even know if it will. But today I truly know the deepest roots must indeed be laid in the light of the gospel, where the divine can only act in us as we, humanity, work with right, uncertain, and even wrong attitudes. But that by acting, we are open to transformation. You know when reason says, get up and walk because you have possibilities, new parameters, and the ability to make a whole life worthwhile, and not be lived in any way? That you can walk alone, make your own choices, because one day they taught you everything. It was an easier, unrealistic reading of God. So, Father, it seems I've lost the power to act, and I think that God doesn't act in me. I think I'd even have the strength to start a new college, a new beginning. This time for pleasure, who knows? But I'm very afraid. I've lost many of my limitations, and when I think about them, I'd like to give up. I like what I do. But everything that involved this choice came with a very heavy burden, which has increased significantly since. You know when you discover that with some people, you have a desire, the drive to be better, and that due to life's mishaps, you've never been able to be close to them, and that, on the other hand, the only people you have closest to you are your own family, and that, due to insanity, what you feel in this case is your worst side, where you lose the strength for everything you propose, even knowing that the fundamental of everything is a personal decision to change. And now I suffer because I know that standing still doesn't get you anywhere. Indifference and omission, for me, are dead or alive. So I'm tired. I'm afraid to start over in unfamiliar areas and too weak to try different approaches to old things. I don't know if you can tell me much, but you can understand me. Father, it's funny when, at some point in our lives, we go through some crisis in which everything we built seems to lose its meaning. Note that this isn't a reality that only happens to those who get married. Here you have a very clear example of a professionally successful woman who, at a certain point, enters a crisis and truly needs help. And even because at this moment, I'm sure many people go through the same crisis. This crisis after a certain point. After having built this, after having studied, after having chosen, you start to question the choices you made. We all go through this crisis. At a certain point in your life, you stop and think, my God, what have I done with my life? What have I chosen for myself? Where have I tied my donkey? No, there isn't that story. And it's very sad, at a certain point in your life, to discover that you made the wrong choice, that you didn't take advantage of the right opportunity. There comes a time in our lives, my people, when we will look at what we chose, what we allowed, what we lost, what we gained. Sometimes the opportunity shines before us. Sometimes it comes through wonderful people, through wonderful situations. The situation shines before our eyes. We don't take it, we make it. Life demands it. It's no use. Today's choices will be demanded in the future, and sometimes in the very near future. What we are reaping for our lives today will be consequences in a while, and then we will have to account for it in the end, in the same way it shines. A horrible situation, but apparently attractive. We take it, we run after it, we do it, and then it becomes a destruction for us. And we need to be very careful with this crisis process. Firstly, because we run the risk of being unfair. Sometimes it's not everything that's wrong. Sometimes it's a detail. But we are reading the whole from the detail. And this is the care you need. What is it? From which window of this house and the house of your life are you looking? Which window have you leaned out? This is where you'll begin to conclude that the materiality of life only has meaning if it is sustained by a spirituality. Spiritual Yamaha, in fact, even though it is physical, we hug and we kiss each other, life takes its toll, there's no point. Today's choices will be taken to heart in the future, and sometimes in the very near future. What we choose for our lives today will be consequences in the future, and then we'll have to reckon with it in the end, just as it shines. A horrifying, yet seemingly attractive situation. We take it, we chase it, we do it, and then it becomes destruction for us. My people, we need to be very careful with this crisis process. First, because we run the risk of being unfair. Sometimes it's not everything that's wrong. Sometimes it's a detail. But we are reading the whole from the detail. And this is the care you need. What is it? From which window of this house of yours, of the house of your life, are you looking? Which window have you leaned out? This is where you will begin to conclude that the materiality of life only has meaning if it is sustained by spirituality. And love is spiritual. In fact, even though it is physical, we hug, we kiss, we touch, we bring the other closer. We carry, we seek the love of a father for his child. For example, it is physical all the time. It is a love of displacement. I take my son to school, I pick him up from school. But all of this is motivated by a spiritual dimension. Within us lies this immaterial dimension of love, which allows us to experience the crisis in the right way. It's very sad to find people locked in their mansions and not have a friend to come in and enjoy that beauty, that wealth. Are we? Without emotional, affective, and spiritual stability, we can't give meaning to everything we've built materially. This is how we explain, my friends, the unhappiness of incredibly wealthy people who don't even have a friend to come into their homes and enjoy the pleasures they have. What's the contradiction? Here I searched, I achieved, but now I have no one to share what I am and what I found, what I achieved. Because, look, people, I'm going to testify to you. I said I experience it firsthand. From what I see, from what I feel, the worst thing isn't being in crisis. The worst thing is not having someone with whom you can share your crisis. This is the worst of all crises. Recognizing that, faced with your problems and difficulties, you are alone. You have no one to turn to. Funny, right? We find people who cope very well with material poverty and who live peacefully being poor. Now, if we lack emotional wealth, spiritual wealth, there's nothing left of us. We can have a wealth of success, of recognition around us. But if we don't have someone to look us in the eye, look, congratulations on your success. Someone you know is truly living that moment with you. The crisis sets in and becomes definitive within us. The greatest poverty we can experience in life. I look at my phone and see 200 or 300 contacts, but I don't recognize them. Is there anyone I can call to cry about, to tell about my difficulties, and know that on the other side, I'll find someone with a word? This will truly help me navigate the difficulties of life. Loneliness, my friends, is one of the craziest things we can face in life. When you really don't have anyone to leave your legacy to, right? And it's not just a legacy. It's about lending meaning to someone, having someone by your side who you care for. Someone who is by your side, who cares for you. This mutual experience of caring and being cared for is deeply fulfilling in a person's life. And that's what's missing. That's what creates crisis. That's what creates sadness. When you realize that your world is empty, he has a good material structure, he has a good structure of achievements, but he lacks the best of them all, which is emotional fulfillment. Because sometimes, my friends, we can't achieve it at home. We can't achieve it with family. But you have a friend who is like a brother. In fact, we can all attest to this at many moments in our lives. What holds us up are not our brothers, but our relatives. Who holds us up? Often, it's the strangers who arrived, but who became fundamental pieces in our lives because of the responsible way they looked at us. They will add to us. If the person doesn't add to us, if they don't make us grow, if we are just a repository for their needs, they don't add to us in any way. And we discover that we live perfectly well without it. Unfortunately, my friends, we have many colleagues. But true friends are friends who add value, right? Who say something that has a new perspective to lend us. This is it. It's very beautiful to be around people who have a new perspective to help you see life. If you have it, do everything you can to maintain these bonds as long as possible. Because this is a wealth, my daughter, that you can't find in shopping malls to buy. You can't find on store shelves. Those who have achieved have achieved. That's why family relationships are often so fragile. It's because siblings, parents, and family members often don't contribute. And it's very sad to come to the conclusion that you receive much more from outside than from those who were in your home, when often the family context represents only problems or difficulties. They are not people who will add to you. They are not people who will promote you, who will help you overcome your difficulties. So we become fragile, we lose that reference point. But not if you come to the conclusion that you don't have that reference point within your home. Ideally, it would be there, but then start establishing connections that can represent that for you. People who will truly help you succeed in life. Live AA. Heal some of this emotional dryness you have. The spiritual area of people who will help you overcome these crises and will be by your side in the moment. There are times when we sow, and there are times when we reap. Lucky, my daughter, that you're only 33 and still have time to so many good things to reverse this family situation. Of course it's possible. You don't have to. Will I be friends with everyone in the house? No. Sometimes that's not even possible. But you need to establish fruitful bonds with the people around you. If we start to look at the details that bother us and make them grow, they truly take over the whole. And what's interesting, Vanessa, what about your letter? It seems to demonstrate that even though you have all this professional success, you experience great emotional instability within your home. And this, often, people, is the cause of many crises. Because there's no point in achieving it. There's no point in having it. There's no point in getting there. We need someone who sees what we've achieved, who supports us in getting there, who is by our side when we get there. And Jesus already said, right? Who is the same when they find the precious pearl? Who knows that the precious pearl is there? They renounce everything that's left over and go after the precious pearl because they know that there you will find it. The necessary security, the right place for you to grow, to establish new projects, to go further. People who look at you in a new way. People who look at us in an old way. It doesn't make any difference. It's horrible to be looked at in an old way. We find someone who extends a hand to us, who gives us an opportunity to be wonderful. Experiments in my life all the time with the friends that, thank God, I've made throughout my life. The people who help me grow, people who say no at the right time, and who then follow your process responsibly, without jealousy, accompanying you in complicity. They want to help us grow. They want to build us up. That's very good, my people. When you find people who represent this role in your life, Vanessa, this emotional security, it is very necessary. All of us, in some way, have experienced the power that a voice has within us. All of us, in some way, have experienced the power that a word has in our lives, to call us out, to make us live, but also to make us die, to enter into a circle. And we stayed there, according to forgotten data, that life is waiting for us. All of us here, at some point, have experienced hearing this voice that calls us. Here, in fact, it doesn't call us from outside. They always call us well. Is it interesting? I'll put it in a simpler way, so we don't get lost. Every time you say something supportive, between me and you, there's a natural filter that is my story. Sometimes you are telling me something. From a meaning, what does it do? Or a meaning for you? When it reaches me, it doesn't resonate. because it doesn't make sense, right? You speak in a special way for me. But when that arrives, it doesn't touch me because the filter of my story didn't allow me to. And what is the filter of my story? My experiences can put within me an inability to perceive. What good are you telling me? They are my obstacles. There are no two. Sometimes I can very well interpret what you are telling me. It's very cool, which is a lot of love. From a doubt that always get into what is good. Are you? And when you speak to me, ultimately, what you say to me resonates with what I say to myself when you... Yes, I am speaking to you right now. This word will only have an effect if what I am saying resonates with your ability to say it to yourself. Are you mistaken in thinking that what you are hearing is only being said by me? Yes. When I say something that makes sense to you, your soul, which is free of all sin, of all exaggeration, of all its excesses, cries out, that's right, the chord of what you need to hear this. The repercussion of what a priest says, of what a pastor, of what a friend has so much authority over us. A person who loves us, right, has so much authority over us when they say something to us. Why does it resonate? Because you, deep down in your heart, identify that voice as a shepherd. This voice is a shepherd. What does pastor mean, people? It's the one who protects the flock, the one who creates a state, an ambience of protection, affection, and care. The shepherd's voice has the power to calm me. The shepherd's body has the power to calm me. Yes, because Christian peace is always restless. The other's voice speaks, reaches within me, reverberates, and I scream with that voice, is that right? As if there were an instance within me. And it can't be held back when the truth reaches us. So, how is it that at times we hear what makes sense and we don't surrender? Because we were resisting. We weren't yet prepared for that truth. As much as our soul had, Congressman, we still weren't free enough to welcome the good of the word that was coming. The good of the word that was coming in one. Jesus, the Good Shepherd, will always be for us a model of fatherhood, of motherhood, of friendship, of coming with a fight. Why? Jesus, the Good Shepherd, reminds us that every time we love someone, we have to dedicate words that shepherd to these people, that we need from our effective authority. To say what the other needs? That's why we want. Sometimes our relationships get so lame. What can we do about confrontations? We run away from saying what needs to be said. How many times in our relationships do we not mature? We get tired, we end. And it could have continued. It could have borne much fruit. Why? Because we did not live the exercise of the word that shepherds. In Father Fabio, I heard this week on the internet that God hates sin, and also the sinner, in a video that someone made. It is an approach to this time. But since I was little, I learned that God is love, that there is no hatred in his heart, and that's why he sent his son to die for us on the cross. How can he hate all his children? My daughter, you must have misunderstood. God's word speaks to us. It leads us to understand that God has a deep rejection of sin, but not of the sinner. I know it's a difficult distinction to make. In fact, the distinction is very difficult. How can I say that I hate Christian sin? But I don't hate him as a person. It's not difficult to understand that because you have your wrong attitudes. And do I run the risk of confusing you with your attitudes? And that's an interesting distinction. A person is not just that attitude. And that's why we need to distinguish. God loves me unconditionally. He doesn't change his mind. He doesn't change his mind because I stopped being a good person. No, I can't even say. God no longer loves the Pope. What does he love about someone who is imprisoned? Someone who has committed a crime? No, that theology doesn't exist. What happens is that we can say that someone who is living the crime of sin runs the risk of no longer perceiving God's love. Isn't that God has stopped loving? It's that person has begun to put up barriers to avoid feeling the love they receive. Then comes the obstacle of sin. That's why God hates sin, because God will not tolerate anything that prevents human beings from knowing his love. God's great commitment to making history is so that humanity may benefit from the mystery of his mercy and his love. So we need to identify that the sinful attitude is not the person. It is part of it, but it is not the person. The person does not become the mistake I made, right? They make mistakes, but they do not become the mistakes I made. And that is why the mystery of salvation in us is precisely to break the power of sin, so that we can increasingly become this space, this territory where God has the opportunity to act. So, just coming back once more to clarify better. God loves the sinner, but does not tolerate sin because sin is an obstacle for the sinner to be aware of God's love in our lives. It is clear, my people, that because of our nature, we are, as it natural, that I often stray toward what is wrong. But religion, the experience we have with Jesus, is always there to help us understand where we are straying, so that we don't lose sight of this transformative love. I read a headline announcing the end of humanity based on Nostradamus, including the Holy Bible itself. The magazine predicted environmental disasters. Based on this, I ask you, how can we not be frightened? How can we not be frightened? With an article that tells us about catastrophes we already see today, how can we keep our faith from diminishing, even in the face of all this? As a priest, as a member of the region, my gratitude, look, I don't care about the promise of ours. We give that the world will end, that it will be destroyed, because I have more to do. So, until the work is finished, it's not that. Until it's finished, I fight. Until it's finished, we play music. It's not Saturday will live, my people. This business stands still, paying attention to tragedies, and only makes us more tragic. We just finished talking about a prophecy that hasn't been fulfilled to this day, which is that the wolf and the lamb will eat from the same plate. Let's pay attention to the good prophecies, and let's fight for the good prophecy to come true in our days. Why should we keep paying attention to this nonsense? These people who know how to predict the future could very well give us next week's Mega Sena winning numbers, right? These people read everyone's palms. It's not reading your own life. It's not you going to the tarot reader or whatever has the power to see the future. It's okay if you believe that, and if you guide your life now, I don't. I have nothing else to do. I have more to do, and I don't want to know about the future because it won't scare me. It's better not to know, right? That way, I'll live life with its surprises. With the good that exists today, I'll build my future well. If the other has the power to read our palms, has the power to make them, then let them read good things rather than tragedy. I don't care. I prefer not to know right now the best way for us to deal with all this. We live well in the present. I don't believe in these promises of tragedy, because I think life follows its natural course and we interfere in the process as we can, changing it for the better. Aren't all these tragedies of nature something else? If not nature's response, the aggression we inflict on it is nothing else. We are the ones creating these tragedies and these environmental tragedies. They have always existed because human beings have always interfered in the process. And today there will be more because we increasingly emit gases that destroy the ozone layer. We increasingly deforest, increasingly weakening our inner world. It's the world we live in. It's as if you took the wall of your house, and every day you were slowing it down. One day it breaks. The trick is to stop swinging the hammer and realize that we avoid tragedy through a beautiful way of living, through a more honest, more balanced way. Then, yes, we will be able to transform the world. But if you've read Father Fabio de Mello's books, you know how transformative they are, how they make us reflect and change our way of seeing life. If you haven't read them yet, don't miss this great opportunity. Learn more by clicking the links in the description.